The theater lights dimmed, the crowd settled into a hush, and somewhere between the last whisper and the first heartbeat, something extraordinary was about to happen. You could feel it before you saw it, the kind of moment that sneaks up on you, tightens your chest, and refuses to let go. If you've ever believed that music can change a room, a life, even a hardened heart, then stay with this story until the very end, and if it moves you even a little, remember to like the video and subscribe. Because moments like this deserve to be shared. Backstage stood a Filipino boy no older than 12, shoes scuffed from years of use, hands trembling as he clutched a small flag folded neatly in his pocket. His name was Miguel, and tonight was the biggest night of his life. He had traveled across oceans with his mother, leaving behind a coastal town where mornings smelled of salt and evenings were filled with borrowed electricity and borrowed hope. His father had passed years ago, a fisherman who sang to the waves while mending nets, teaching Miguel that songs were prayers you could carry with you when words weren't enough. When money ran out, music remained. When fear came knocking, music answered. Miguel wasn't here to chase fame. He wasn't here to prove anything to anyone. He was here because his mother believed his voice carried something rare, truth. And because his father, in the quiet of memory, had once told him, "Sing like you're standing for everyone who can't." That sentence followed Miguel onto the stage as his name was called, echoing louder than the applause. The judges smiled politely. The audience leaned forward, curious but cautious. Simon Cowell sat back in his chair, arms crossed, a familiar mask of skepticism resting on his face. He had heard thousands of voices, witnessed countless dreams rise and fall under bright lights. It took a lot to surprise him. Miguel introduced himself softly, his accent gentle, his eyes steady despite the fear. When asked what he would sing, he paused, took a breath, and said he would sing the Philippine national anthem. A ripple moved through the crowd. Some were confused. Others exchanged glances. This wasn't a typical choice. It wasn't flashy or trendy. But Miguel stood tall, shoulders squared, as if he had already made peace with whatever came next. The music began, simple and solemn, and on the first note, the room changed. Miguel's voice wasn't loud, but it was pure. It carried the warmth of home and the weight of history. Each lyric was shaped with care, as though he were holding something fragile and sacred. As he sang, images seemed to rise from the sound itself of early mornings and hard work, of mothers waiting by windows, of fathers returning at dusk, of children learning to hope in places where hope is often postponed. The anthem became more than a song, it became a bridge. In the audience, people wiped their eyes without realizing when they had started crying. A woman clasped her hands together, whispering the melody as if she knew it by heart. A man nodded slowly, jaw tight, remembering a country he had left behind long ago. The stage lights reflected off tearful faces, and the applause that threatened to interrupt the performance stayed respectfully at bay, as if everyone understood that this was something to be listened to, not broken. Simon leaned forward. His arms uncrossed. His eyes softened. He had judged voices for decades, but this wasn't about technique. It was about courage. About a child standing alone on a massive stage, singing for a nation, for a family, for a father who couldn't be there. As Miguel reached the final verse, his voice trembled, not from fear, but from feeling. He closed his eyes and sang the last note as though releasing a promise into the air. Silence followed. Not the awkward kind, but the sacred kind. Then the room erupted. The audience stood as one, applause thunderous and unrestrained. Miguel looked stunned, tears spilling freely now, his mother sobbing backstage, hands pressed to her mouth. The judges rose too, clapping with genuine awe. And then Simon Cowell did something no one expected. He turned away, wiped his eyes, and took a breath that seemed to carry years within it. When he finally spoke, his voice was thick. He talked about his own father, about music that connects us to where we come from, about how rare it is to witness something so honest. He admitted that he had been moved in a way he hadn't felt in a long time. The crowd listened, silent again, understanding that this wasn't television drama, it was real. Miguel didn't win that night in the way competitions are measured. There were no fireworks or instant trophies. But he walked off the stage changed, knowing that his voice had reached hearts he would never meet. Back home, neighbors gathered around small screens, crying and cheering, feeling seen. Children picked up microphones made of spoons and dreamed a little bigger. Parents held their kids a little closer. The story didn't end with applause. It continued in the messages Miguel received from strangers thanking him for reminding them who they were. It continued in Simon's quiet reflection, in the way he later spoke about vulnerability as strength. It continued in the understanding that sometimes, the most unforgettable moments come not from trying to impress, but from daring to be sincere. If this story touched you, if it reminded you why you believe in music, in courage, in the power of a single voice, take a second to like this video and subscribe to the channel. These stories matter. They deserve to be told, shared, and remembered. Because somewhere right now, another child is standing backstage, heart racing, carrying a song that could change everything. No one noticed the boy at first. The cameras were adjusting, the audience was still settling, and even the judges looked relaxed, unaware that the next few minutes would become one of those moments people talk about years later. This wasn't just another audition. This was the kind of moment that sneaks into your heart, stays there, and reminds you why stories like this deserve to be liked, shared, and remembered. So if you feel it too, don't forget to support the channel by liking the video and subscribing. The boy's name was Angelo. He was 11 years old, from a small town in the Philippines where nights were quiet and dreams had to be loud just to survive. His clothes were simple, his posture shy, but his eyes carried something heavy, something lived. Music wasn't a hobby for him, it was how his family survived grief. His father had passed away when Angelo was very young, leaving behind memories, a worn-out radio, and a love for patriotic songs that played every morning before work. His mother worked long hours, sometimes skipping meals, just to make sure Angelo could keep singing. When Angelo stepped onto the AGT stage, the lights felt too bright, the audience too big. He swallowed hard. His voice shook as he introduced himself. The judges smiled kindly, but they had heard thousands of introductions just like this. Simon Cowell leaned back, prepared for another performance, another decision, another night. No one expected what came next. Angelo said he would sing the Philippine national anthem. The room shifted. This wasn't strategy. This wasn't about winning. This was personal. Angelo stood straighter, as if his late father were standing behind him, hands on his shoulders. The music began, soft and steady, and with the first note, something invisible passed through the theater. His voice wasn't trained to perfection, but it was honest. It carried the sound of early mornings, of sacrifice, of a child growing up too fast yet still believing in something bigger than himself. Each word felt deliberate, as though Angelo wasn't just singing, he was remembering. Remembering his father's voice. Remembering his homeland. Remembering nights when hope was the only thing they had left. The audience stopped breathing. People who didn't understand the language felt the meaning anyway. Tears welled up without permission. Some placed their hands over their hearts. Others closed their eyes, letting the melody take them somewhere far away. This wasn't just a song from another country, it was a reminder that love for home, for family, for dignity, sounds the same everywhere. Simon Cowell's expression changed slowly. His usual sharp gaze softened. His jaw tightened. He leaned forward, eyes glistening, as if the song had reached somewhere he didn't often let people see. When Angelo reached the final lines, his voice cracked, not from fear, but from emotion too strong to contain. He finished, eyes closed, tears running freely down his cheeks. The silence afterward was overwhelming. Then the applause exploded. A standing ovation shook the room. Angelo looked stunned, almost afraid, like he wasn't sure he was allowed to receive that much love. Backstage, his mother collapsed into tears, knowing every struggle had led to this single moment. Simon stood up. He tried to speak, but stopped. He wiped his eyes. The audience went quiet again. When he finally found his voice, it wasn't the voice of a judge, it was the voice of a man moved beyond words. He spoke about parents, about memory, about how music can unlock emotions you don't even realize you've been carrying. He admitted that Angelo's performance broke through his defenses in a way few ever had. Angelo didn't walk away with instant fame that night. What he walked away with was something far more powerful, proof that his voice mattered. That his story mattered. that a child from a small Filipino town could stand on the world's biggest stage and remind everyone what humanity sounds like. Long after the show aired, messages poured in. People said they cried watching it alone in their rooms. Others said it reminded them of their parents, their countries, their own forgotten dreams. Angelo went home not as a celebrity, but as a. The moment didn't start with applause. It started with silence, the kind that settles over a room right before something unforgettable happens. The cameras were rolling, the judges were relaxed, and the audience expected just another audition. No one knew that within minutes, hearts would be broken open, tears would fall freely, and a memory would be created that people would replay again and again. If you've ever believed that one voice can change everything, stay till the end, and if this story touches you, don't forget to like the video and subscribe to the channel so stories like this continue to reach the world. The boy walked onto the stage slowly, almost carefully, as if afraid the floor might disappear beneath him. His name was Rafael, 12 years old, from a small Filipino village where dreams often sleep quietly because survival comes first. His shoes were borrowed, his shirt neatly pressed by his mother's tired hands the night before. Music had never been a luxury in his home, it was comfort. When the power went out, they sang. When food was scarce, they sang. When his father passed away after years of illness, leaving silence behind, music was the only thing that filled it. Rafael had learned to sing by listening. Old radios. Church gatherings. His father humming the national anthem every Independence Day with a hand over his heart. "Never forget who you are," his father used to say. Those words echoed in Rafael's mind as he stood under the blinding lights of the AGT stage, facing judges he had only ever seen on a cracked phone screen. Simon Cowell glanced at him with polite interest. He had seen nervous kids before. Talented kids. Emotional stories. The show had taught him to guard his heart. Rafael introduced himself softly, voice shaking but steady enough to stand on. When asked what he would sing, he paused, swallowed his fear, and answered with quiet certainty, the Philippine national anthem. A murmur passed through the audience. This wasn't safe. This wasn't expected. This was a child making a choice that came straight from the soul. The music began, gentle and slow, and the first note left Rafael's lips like a promise. His voice wasn't loud, but it carried weight. It carried history. It carried every sacrifice his family had made. Each word sounded like it had lived inside him for years, waiting for this moment to be released. He sang not to impress, but to honor his father, his mother, his homeland, and every unseen struggle that shaped him. People in the audience felt it instantly. You could see it in the way they leaned forward, in the way hands moved to chests, in the tears that appeared before anyone realized they were crying. Even those who didn't understand the language understood the emotion. Because love for home doesn't need translation. Simon's posture changed. His expression softened. The sharp edge that defined him melted into something raw and human. He stared at the boy, eyes glassy, breathing slow and heavy. This wasn't about notes or technique anymore. This was about truth, and it was hitting him harder than he expected. As Rafael reached the final verse, his voice trembled. Not from fear, but from the overwhelming emotion of carrying something so big in such a small body. Tears rolled down his cheeks as he finished the song, standing tall until the very last note faded into silence. For a second, no one moved. Then the theater erupted. A standing ovation shook the walls. The sound was thunderous, unstoppable. Rafael covered his mouth in disbelief. Backstage, his mother fell to her knees, crying not from sadness, but from the release of years of pain, hope, and sacrifice. Simon stood. He turned away, wiping his eyes, struggling to regain control. When he spoke, his voice cracked. He talked about his own past, about parents, about how music has a way of reaching places words never can. He admitted that Rafael reminded him why he fell in love with music in the first place, and that moments like this are why the show exists. Rafael didn't win the competition that night. But he won something far greater. He won the knowledge that his voice mattered. That his story mattered. That a boy from a small village could stand before the world and be heard. After the episode aired, messages poured in from every corner of the globe. People said they cried watching Alone in the Dark. Others said it reminded them of their parents, their roots, their own forgotten dreams. Raphael returned home changed, not famous, but fearless. And that's why this moment will never be forgotten. Because sometimes, the strongest performances aren't about perfection, they're about honesty. If this story moved you, inspired you, or made you feel something real, please like the video and subscribe to the channel. Because somewhere out there, another child is holding onto a song, waiting for the courage to sing, and your support helps keep those voices alive. It didn't begin with cheering or dramatic music. It began with a quiet breath taken by a child standing alone on a stage that had swallowed the dreams of many before him. Millions were watching, but in that moment, it felt as if time had narrowed to just one small heartbeat. This was not supposed to be unforgettable. It was just another audition until it wasn't. Stay with this story until the end, and if it touches your heart, make sure to like the video and subscribe to the channel, because moments like this deserve to live on. The boy's name was Joshua. He was 12 years old, born in a modest Filipino neighborhood where homes were close together and hope had to fight hard to stay alive. His life was simple, but not easy. His father had been a construction worker overseas, sending money home whenever he could, singing patriotic songs over crackling phone calls just to remind his family that distance could not erase love. When illness took his father suddenly, the songs stopped, but Joshua never forgot them. Joshua learned to sing not from lessons, but from listening. Listening to his mother hum while cooking late at night. Listening to neighbors sing during community gatherings. Listening to his father's voice echoing in memory, proud and steady. Music became Joshua's way of holding on, his way of speaking when words felt too small. When Joshua stepped onto the AGT stage, the lights nearly blinded him. His hands shook, his knees felt weak, but he remembered why he was there. He introduced himself softly, his voice barely rising above the microphone. The judges smiled politely. Simon Cowell leaned back, unreadable, prepared for anything but expecting nothing extraordinary. When Joshua said he would sing the Philippine national anthem, there was a pause long enough for curiosity to ripple through the crowd. This wasn't a song meant to impress. It wasn't trendy or dramatic. It was sacred. Joshua placed one hand over his heart, just like his father used to do. The first note floated into the air, fragile but sincere. His voice wasn't perfect, but it was honest. Every lyric carried weight of sacrifice, of resilience, of love for a homeland that teaches its children to stand tall even when life bends them low. The anthem filled the theater, and something shifted. People leaned forward. Some closed their eyes. Others felt their throats tighten without understanding why. Joshua sang as if he were standing for everyone he had left behind. For his mother. For his father. For families watching from small homes across the Philippines. His voice grew stronger, not louder, but deeper rooted in emotion. Tears streamed down his face, yet he didn't stop. He finished the song with a quiet strength that demanded respect. When silence followed, it was heavy and full. Then the audience rose to their feet. Applause crashed like waves. Joshua stood frozen, overwhelmed, unsure if what he had just given was enough. Backstage, his mother sobbed uncontrollably, clutching a photograph of his father, whispering his name like a prayer. Simon Cowell stood slowly. He turned away, rubbing his eyes, trying to steady himself. When he spoke, his voice cracked. He admitted that he hadn't expected to feel anything, yet he felt everything. He talked about pride, about parents, about how music has the power to reach places we protect too carefully. For a moment, the judge wasn't a judge at all, he was just human. Joshua didn't leave the stage with a trophy that night. But he left with something far greater. He left knowing his voice carried meaning. That his pain had turned into purpose. That his father's songs were not lost, they had been heard by the world. After the episode aired, messages poured in. People said they cried alone watching it. Others said it reminded them of their roots, their parents, their own struggles. Joshua went back home the same boy, but braver. Stronger. Seen. And that is why this moment will never fade. Because sometimes, the smallest voice carries the biggest truth. If this story moved you, inspired you, or reminded you of what truly matters, please like the video and subscribe to the channel. Your support helps stories like this reach the hearts that need them most.